marijuana. Now, I don't think this was in Dallas at the time, because you could go to Seagoville Prison in Dallas for possession of a joint, that's for sure. But we went to the recording studio, and on the way, Bobby said he asked a kid from our neighborhood, Stevie Vaughn, to play lead guitar on our songs with us for the recording. I said, you asked the kid from our, who's Stevie Vaughn? He says, well, he's a 14-year-old kid. And our 14-year-old kid? I go, Bobby, what are you talking about? We could play our own songs. We play our own guitars. And Bobby turned around and says, Stephen, shut up. Listen, this kid, Stevie Vaughn, can really play the guitar, and he's going to make us sound like we know what we're doing. And so we arrived at the recording studio, and there was Stevie sitting on his metal folding chair with his, I believe he had a Gibson at that time with two of those humbucking pickups. And he said, so what are you guys doing? Want to play a little bit so I know what to do? So we played about 8 seconds of our first song. He says, okay, just stop. Okay. I know what I'm going to do. And we laid down our instrumental tracks in one take, and then we did a second, and that was it back then. That's all you got. And then the engineer said, okay, son, you want to do a lead? And Stevie got up and said, well, sure. He says, this is kind of a crappy song that they're doing. So what if I did like a really bad lead and then switched to a really good lead? How about that? And they said, well, sure, son, you could do that. He goes, oh, yeah, I could do that. So Stevie played this lead, and our jaws just dropped to the ground. The engineer said, that was good, son. You got another one in you? And Stevie said, oh, yeah. He got up and then did one of these blistering Eric Clapton leads. Fabulous. And then I could see, like the fly on the wall, I saw the engineer go out the back door of the studio and call down the hallway, and other grown-ups come in. And look, he says, son, want to do another lead? I go, sure. Stevie got up, started laughing, playing another one of those leads where he hits those low bass notes, jump up to the real high notes, just fingers flying over that fretboard. And I'm looking through the window, and I see about 8 adult faces, all of them looking in awe. I'm looking at the guy who brought us in to record. Again, eyes just staring straight ahead. And I realized this was the first time any of us saw the real thing. And by real thing, I mean real genius. We felt we were in the presence of something holy, separate from anything we had experienced in our lives. That was the only time I ever played with Stevie. That was the only time, that one time.
But still, isn't that fun to have that in your repertoire of events in your life? I think that is so cool. Listen to me. I have to take a break here.
Yep.
Before we go to break, though, I want to just say this. The Tobowlowsky Files. You, my friend, are a born storyteller, as my audience has just heard. You guys have got to go and listen to this phenomenal podcast he's making. He makes me jealous when I listen to his podcast. He'll tell us the story of that and how that came to be maybe after the break if we have time. So, Stephen, just sit back for a second. We're going to break. We got to recognize the sponsors. And everybody in the audience, you do it the same. Relax for a minute, and we will be right back on the Halli Casser-Jayne Show.
Is someone you love living with frequent pain? Are they spending more time just sitting in a chair or lying in bed or going to the ER more often? Other than taking them to the doctor, you may not know what else to do. Treasure Coast Hospice can help in more ways than you may realize. Even if you don't think your loved one is ready for hospice care, their experts can evaluate your loved one's condition and direct you to the right resources in our community. Call Treasure Coast Hospice to learn more or visit tchospice.org.
Hello, I'm Halli Casser-Jayne, host of the Halli Casser-Jayne Show. Join me Wednesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern when I talk with the great artists, writers, musicians, politicians, and celebrities of our day. The Halli Casser-Jayne Show is talk radio for fine minds. Tune in live or listen to the podcast at hallicasserjayne.com. We are back on the Halli Casser-Jayne Show. Today I'm talking with actor, writer, producer, podcaster, singer, father, husband, storyteller, Stephen Tobolowsky. Welcome back to the show. Stephen, nice to have you here. You're a trip.
So nice to be here.
I mean, you were so cool. You were just wonderful to talk to. So listen to me. If you could come back in life as a leading man, who would that be?
It would be Stephen Tobolowsky with hair.
Well, you can do that. You can get one of those, brags. No, they don't work, huh?
It doesn't work.
You're not going there. Okay, well, so much for that. So switching gears, you come from a literary tradition, and I understand that your aunt was the head librarian at Ben Junior High School in Dallas, now Hillcrest High School. I want to say that for all of my friends in Dallas. So writing, The Dangerous Animal Club, as I said in the beginning, do you ever sleep? I don't think so, because you're writing, you're acting. Talk to me about this wonderful collection of stories you tell in this book. I love this book.
The thing about sleep, when you write, I realize the difference between acting and writing. When you act, you finish, the curtain comes down, you go out with your friends, you have a cheeseburger, and you go home. When you write, you never stop. It goes through your head. It goes through your dreams. You hear the different characters talking to you on. It never stops. It's maddening. The origin kind of the Dangerous Animals Club book. And these are all true stories from my life, some about showbiz, mostly not about showbiz, because I think actors telling show business stories is kind of like a shallow grave. Everybody thinks like, well, that's going to be interesting. Let's hear what happened on the set. But it's not that interesting unless there's a universal element to it. It was about, 5 years ago? Maybe 6 years ago, I was in Iceland riding a horse on the side of an active volcano. Right. What could possibly go wrong? So anyway, it was terrible. We were hit by a freak windstorm, which Iceland is famous for, and it lifted me and the horse off the ground. No exaggeration there. I was there with other people. And the wind, like tornadic, the wind threw us down on the other side of the road, and the horse took off with me dangling off of the saddle. And somewhere on the other side of the mountain, I was thrown onto a hardened lava flow where apparently I sustained what later doctors called a fatal injury. I didn't know it at the time. I was going in and out of consciousness, but I broke 5 of my vertebrae, and the 4th vertebra, C4, was crushed. So I had the Chris Reeve injury, bad. And I had no idea. No one had any idea at this time about how bad it was, and I was mostly unconscious. I was there with Tony Shalhoub and Brooke Adams. They were on the horseback riding trip, too. And Brooke's sister, was in a terrible accident on horseback in Africa that was almost the same, not on a volcano, but I looked the same as her sister, and it was Brooke that insisted that they get me to a hospital. And I do believe to this day that it was Brooke that saved my life.
Wow.
They got me to Reykjavik, and they put me in a brace. I was walking around Iceland for a few days, flew back to America, and that's when I saw my doctor, who told me I had a fatal injury, and asked if I wanted to know why I was alive. And I said, because I was in one of those big braces now. And he said, you're alive because you had advanced arthritis of the neck, which I found very depressing. But I had advanced arthritis of the neck, and the bone on bone, and the fact that the vertebra had like overgrown one another, and that my neck was warped and twisted, made it to where the blow went out into my shoulders instead of snapping my neck off. So I was alive because of a curse, this advanced arthritis. And when you have a broken neck, there isn't a lot you can do. I couldn't act. I couldn't audition. I could walk, but I couldn't walk much. So one of the things I could do to keep my spirits alive was I had this notion, what if what the doctor said was true? And what if this was a fatal injury and I was never able to see my wife or children again? I said, what if I wrote the stories of my life so that my children would know who their father was in case I ever get stupid enough to ride a horse again? So the Dangerous Animals Club were the stories I would tell my children to say, if you want to know your dad, read this book. This is the testament of who your dad was in life. And so it has stories of me hunting snakes when I was a child, and teacher trying to throw me out of college later on, and some show business stories of crazy things that happen.
It's a great, hear me, great read. It is just fabulous. And I actually have it by my bed, and I'm like, I'm going to sleep with you every night lately, reading, chapter by chapter, because each of them is their own individual story. Everybody picked this unbelievable book up. Stephen, you talked about that. That's not the only crazy thing that's happened to you in your life. You're like an accident waiting to happen. Seriously, you were once held hostage at gunpoint in a supermarket in Snyder Plaza, Dallas. You were almost murdered twice in 1 week in Hartford, Connecticut by different people? I mean,
Yes. Well, we were in a rough neighborhood. I'm sure if I stayed longer, it would have been more. Yeah, but twice they were going to have me on Tom Snyder before.
Oh, God, I love Tom Snyder, yeah.
The Tomorrow Show, right?
Yeah.
Tomorrow.
The late,
and they said,
late,
can you write out a list of 10 things that you've done that are weird? And so I'm writing out this list. And I was almost killed like on a Monday and a Wednesday or Tuesday and Thursday in Hartford, Connecticut. I mean, that's tough. And held hostage at gunpoint in a grocery store. Yeah, a guy came up to me and just pulled a gun out and stuck it in my forehead and said, I don't know why I picked you today. I don't know why. And the first thing I thought of was Chad Everett. You know, you can't make stuff like that up. It's like I thought of Chad Everett on Medical Center, and he had a show on Medical Center, which was very popular at the time, about what to do in a hostage situation. And Chad Everett said you had to keep the hostage, you have to keep him talking. You have to keep the guy with the gun talking. Well, I didn't know how to do that, but I knew how to talk, so I talked to this guy. I didn't even take a breath. I was talking so fast about my life and career and how I was disappointing my father and how he reminded me of my father. And maybe if there was just some way the two people could sit at it, blah, 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 blah. But for some reason, the nonstop jabber was enough noise for the SWAT team to come in the back of the store and go on adjacent aisles. And, scarier than the moment where the guy stuck the gun in my head was when I ran out of gas after about 45 minutes of nonstop talking, and a voice came in my ear and said, Stephen, you got to do something different now. Got to change, got to do something different. And the only thing I could think to do was to invite the guy over for dinner. And so he's got the gun in my head, and I'm saying, I have to go get this chicken on. I don't know if you're doing anything later tonight. But why don't you come on over? And I'm getting a lot out of this. I mean, I'm working a lot of problems out with my dad, and I don't know if you're getting anything. But come on over. You can meet my girlfriend, Beth. We'll cook up the chicken and have some mangoes and wine. We'll just keep this party going. And I pushed past him with the shopping cart. Oh, God, it was like in slow motion. I still see it now. And I felt the gun go into the back of my head. And the little voice came back in my ear and said, don't turn around. Don't turn around. Whatever you do, don't turn around. Get to the end of the aisle, and if you get there, you could run. If you get there, you could run. And I got to the end of the aisle, and I turned my cart, and I didn't have to run because that SWAT team took that distance I had given them, and they jumped over the food. And next time you are in a grocery store, ladies and gentlemen, look and see how high those shelves are. That SWAT team jumped over the food and had my potential dinner guest bound and gagged. I'm saying, it was like 8 seconds. And I'm wandering in this deserted store alone. They're carrying this guy out like a carpet on their shoulders, like a boa constrictor. He's just squiggling. They carry him out, put him in the police car. I'm wandering in the completely deserted store with my groceries, and I go up to a deserted checkout stand and wait. Policeman came up to me and patted me on the back and said, hey, pal, you could just go. I go, oh, thanks. So I got my groceries and went home, and my girlfriend Beth was there and said, well, where were you? I said, well, I was just held hostage at gunpoint. And she said, well, it took a long time. I said, I know the hostage thing takes a lot longer than you would think it would take. I'm starving. And I still look back at that moment, and the one thing that really comes back at me, it's the one time that I ever left a store without paying for my groceries. It was free.
Stephen,
food.
More than anybody I have ever interviewed, and I don't have to tell you how many people I have interviewed, you are, without a question, without a doubt, the only person I know who is a true character in his own life.
Well, I guess that's what, that's kind of where the podcast came from.
Exactly.
I did this movie, a friend of mine, Robert Brinkman, who is a wonderful cinematographer, did Encino Man, Cable Guy, all sorts of great shows. He said, I love your stories, Stephen. What if we set up a camera and you just tell your stories to the camera? Well, with the advent of HD, that movie was able to be made because it was cheap enough, and we premiered it at the HBO Comedy Festival in Aspen. Now it's been all over the world. Stephen Tobolowsky's birthday party.
Listen, you just took my thunder. I was going to say that you actually invited me to your birthday party by sending me the DVD. The best I'll ever get to your birthday party. That is so wonderful. Can I tell you? I was so engaged in that. That is a true piece of art. Okay, you take it over.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I love that movie.
I love it.